Hello and welcome to episode 72 of the Thinking LSAT podcast in Los Angeles. I'm Nathan Fox. With me in Washington, D.C., Ben Olson. Ben, how you doing?
Doing good.
Thanks for doing today's show an hour earlier than normal. Hope that didn't put you in traffic or anything like that.
No, it's noon here, so it's a great time to come in.
Perfect. On today's show, we have a whole bunch of letters from listeners. We have some logical reasoning from the June 2007 test. And we have, maybe we could start. Ben, you have an update on that student of yours who went over on the writing sample. I was speculating last time that they might end up getting their entire score canceled, which would be ridiculous. But do you know what happened?
So I don't know the final outcome, but I did think that this update was somewhat humorous given LSAC's, tendencies to be very unclear and skittish, I guess, about how it communicates with students. But basically, he wrote them and said, hey, look, I got a violation in relation to the writing sample, which has no effect on my score. So I was hoping that the violation might not be associated with the score directly, but either removed or noted some other way. He was trying his best to get the asterisks removed or whatever. And they actually wrote back a couple emails to his original argument saying that, quote, you might or might not get a letter from us explaining what we'll do. So,
wow.
I thought that was funny. Then he did get a letter. He ended up getting a letter a couple weeks later, which sounded like it had a lot of boilerplate, which basically said we take infractions very seriously, and you signed something at the beginning of the test indicating that you had read the rules, but we probably won't pursue this issue in your case any further and may only decide to note it if there is an incident in future testing. So if he violates the rules again, it sounds like they might bring up this violation, but they might not bring up this violation in this case. The resounding theme here, though, is that it's unclear what will happen. So He doesn't know until he gets his score back, but they said they might not pursue it in any case. So he's waiting to see what will happen, and that's that.
That response is just a lot like, well, we can do whatever we want, so we're just going to reserve the right to do whatever we want.
Yeah.
Thanks for playing.
And we're not even going to tell you that we're going to stick with our guns or anything. We're just going to do whatever.
I mean, it's amazing that they even respond. They responded with a complete non-response.
Yeah.
Just, we may or may not do anything at all. But
yeah,
good. Thanks for writing. Awesome. I guess we could go right into these two emails. We have two pretty much identical stories, I guess, huh? In the end, I thought at first they were two different problems with accommodations. But it looks like it's only one. Did we mention this last time, or I think maybe not. I think the first email came in like right after we recorded the last episode. Does that sound right? None of this made it into the podcast last time, I think.
To be honest, I don't remember.
Okay, but yeah. I think, as I recall, it's like these emails came in just immediately right when we recorded a couple weeks ago. And so the emails, I'm going to take the names out of them. And these are related to getting accommodations. Here they go. Hi, my name is redacted, and I'm writing to you because I really need some advice. I'm sure you're very busy, but the situation I found myself in, according to my extensive Google searches, has never happened before in the history of the LSAT. Well, I mean, it would be hard to prove that had never happened before. But anyway, this listener can't find any evidence that this has happened before. So here's the story. I took the September LSAT a few weeks ago with accommodations, and my proctor told me I did not have to take the 5th section, despite my questioning him several times about this. After the 4th section, he collected the book, gave me my writing sample, and when I finished that, he told me I was finished. Today I received an email from LSAC. This listener attached it. We're not going to read the whole email from the LSAC. But basically, here's what happened. And this happened twice, because the exact same thing happened with a student actually of mine, a classroom and private tutoring student of mine. Same exact thing. She gets accommodated, time and a half. She shows up, and the proctor gave her the test. The test had 5 sections in it, but the proctor wouldn't let her do the 5th section. And the letter from the LSAC or the response from the LSAC is basically, oh yeah, sorry, no, we are making the accommodated students take the 5th section now. The experimental section, you do have to do all 5 sections. We're sorry that our proctor gave you the wrong instructions. We would allow you to, we are canceling your score. There's nothing we could do about it. We can't give you a score because you didn't take all 5 sections. So what we're going to do is we're going to cancel it with a note in your file that says basically it's our fault. And then we're going to give you a free retake in either December or February.
Yeah. So wait, is that's not the response that the first person got, right? The first person got a more harsh response, no?
I thought that was basically it. I mean, maybe not quite so much of a mea culpa from the LSAC, but it was basically like, oh yeah, sorry, we'll let you retake it for free.
So these 2 students are going to end up with a cancellation on their record?
Well, that is unclear whether this is going to be a canceled score. I would be very curious whether this counts as one of their 3 attempts. It certainly should not count as one of their 3 attempts.
No.
I think it's going to be more like I believe I read something in the note that it was like an administrative cancel or something. Yeah. The point, I think, is simply LSAC made this change and didn't really instruct their proctors very well.
Yeah. And one thing that we should clarify here is that the experimental section can be 5th, but it's not always 5th. So I'm really confused by why the proctors thought that if someone was not going to do the experimental section, that they should somehow just not do the 5th section.
I'm guessing that the instructions just said something like, well, wait a second. No, the wording, it was actually, when I saw it the first time, it made sense to me how the proctor could mistakenly read it wrong. Right. So in this email from, this is the second one we heard about, it says, the proctor instructed her that there would be no omitted variable section.
My gosh. Let's give him a double negative. You need to be scoring at least a 170 on the LSAT to proctor the LSAT.
My guess, I mean, that's you could see how that could happen, right?
Oh, that's very confusing. There will be no variable section omitted?
Yeah, right, because they're used to omitting the variable section for accommodated students, but now there's going to be no omitted variable section.
No omitted variable section. Oh man, those people. I don't know what's wrong with them. That's seriously, you can just read it twice.
That could be from Chris's email. I mean, I don't know that that's actually how it was in the we don't have the proctor instructions, but that's in Chris's email. And but I could certainly see if that's what the instructions to the proctor said. I can certainly see how the proctor would get it wrong.
Would be very confusing.
Yeah.
You would say, oh, no variable section. Okay, got it.
No, it's no omitted variable section. So that means there is a variable section.
Yeah.
Point is, both of these accommodated students did receive instructions from the LSAC in advance, which it seems like they did not read, that instructed them that they would be doing all 5 sections of the test.
Well, maybe it instructed them in that way.
Right, exactly, that there would be no omitted variable section.
I think he's quoting that because I don't think he could have, not that he couldn't have made that up, but I don't think he would have. That's just not how you talk.
Right. I agree. Anyway, and it actually seems like the first writer pushed back on the proctor. So maybe the first writer actually did read all the instructions and knew that she was going to be taking all 5 sections. And she pushed back on the proctor, and the proctor said no and took the test away from her and said, nope, you're not doing the 5th section. And of course, I guess as it turns out, the 5th section was not the variable section. If it was the variable section, then I guess they could just say, oh, okay, our bad. Yeah, but we can still give you a score because you did all the 4 scored sections. But if the 5th section was one of the sections that was supposed to count, then yeah, I mean, I'm wondering, I mean, if they pushed back and said, hey, listen, LSAC, this was your fault. I'm trying to apply early. I want to do these early decision programs. And now because of your error, I'm not going to be able to apply early decision. I would hope that the LSAC would figure out a way to accommodate them. It seems all they'd have to do is pay a proctor for 1 hour of time and set aside just have them go do that section. But I don't know, maybe they feel like we can't do that because scores are about to be released and, the test is going to be out there in the wild and it's too late or something. I don't know.
I think so. When we had the Snowmageddon or whatever you want to call it a few years ago here, there was so much snow. A lot of test centers had to be closed down. So I think Georgetown University did have their test on, this was in February, it was a few years ago. And some other schools did not have their test, or I might be getting that backward. But the point is that LSAC contacted the people who had been scheduled to go to test centers that ended up getting shut down because of the snow. And they said to them, hey, you're going to take the test again, or you're going to have the opportunity to take the test in a week. And some people, it was 2 weeks. So they basically had another week or 2 weeks of studying. But when they went and took it, they took a test that was different from the test that everyone else ended up taking. And I think the rationale is as soon as this test starts being administered, we really need to keep the window of time.
Because they're worried about cheating.
Yeah. I mean, even if the test isn't released, people leave and they're like, oh, that horrible, 4th game or whatever. And some people remember enough about the game that they can help other people. So I think if they're not willing to do that within a week, it's too late.
Yeah. Boy, this is a bummer. These students, if they were planning on applying early, that is not happening anymore. They probably are going to have to continue to study for the LSAT, take it again in early December, possibly consider waiting another application cycle if they really wanted to apply early. It also makes it so that they only have one crack at it now, right? They don't get a backup test date anymore, at least not for 2017 admission. So this turns out pretty bad for these students. And it's funny, but it's also, I don't know. It's kind of like gallows humor a little bit for these kids because that sucks. That's terrible. And then their response is like, oh, yeah, we'll let you take it again for free. I mean, it's a little bit like a free kick in the nuts. It's like, well, you already had one miserable day. And now you're going to have another miserable day because of our error, but at least we won't charge you for it because we're magnanimous. Anyhow, that's that. Do we have anything else to say about that?
No, but the news is loud and clear. If you're getting accommodations, chances are very good that you have to take all 5 sections.
They changed the policy. They changed the policy, but they didn't do a very good job of letting everybody know. I mean, that caught me by surprise. Sounds like it caught you by surprise too. Or, maybe you started hearing out about it like a week before the test, I guess. Huh?
Yeah. Well, you remember that email that I had from that student who had double time? His email basically came back and it was super convoluted because it was talking about the history of the practice of not giving the variable section, but now all students would be required to have the variable section, which would seem to clarify that this particular student who had double time would have the variable section. But given the fact that he had asked just straight up, will I have it? And they came back with this sort of convoluted answer. It was still very confusing. It's like, well, yeah, but am I an exception? Is this, when you say all, does that mean me as well? Because in the past, that has not included me. So, it was very
Well, they
confusing.
write like lawyers in the worst sense of that description, right? They write
Yeah.
as if they're just trying to protect themselves from lawsuits, which maybe they are because they probably do get sued a lot. So I guess that's that. Maybe we should move on.
Yeah.
Okay, here's the next letter. Hi, Nathan. I'm really enjoying your and Ben's podcast while on my way to work. I'm an older student, age 40, with a lot of business and community experience. I've been an entrepreneur and have held various senior marketing and communications positions in corporations, and I'm also an active member on the board of directors of a prominent nonprofit. Also, I have a family, a husband, and 3 kids. There are only 2 law schools in my state, one of which is in my city. I'd be thrilled to attend there. My question is this. Will law schools view me as someone who doesn't have a lot of choice in where she'll go, given that my career and community connections are all established in my city and that I have a family? All of this will be apparent from my resume, as a lot of my volunteer experience is with my kids' schools. If that's the case, will schools be less likely to offer me a generous scholarship?
I mean, my initial reaction to this is, yeah, I think that they might see this applicant, who she said she wants to be called Rebecca. They might see Rebecca as someone who is tied to the community, and therefore they might have more leverage over her application in the sense that they know she's unlikely to go to other places. But I think that the benefits of having this experience of being someone who is connected in the community, and the school is very much a part of that community, far outweigh the negatives. And so if I were an admissions officer at this school in her city, I would look at her application as someone who's very likely to get a job after she's done with school, very likely to stay connected with the school, probably donate money to the school because she's so invested in this community. She's not going to leave and go somewhere else and never have any other connection with the school. So I think the benefits far outweigh the potential con here, and therefore I would be wanting to give her a scholarship. Come to this city, stay here, come to this school, and continue to build on what you've already built.
I mean, they're going to want to give her a scholarship, again, if her LSAT and GPA are the kind of numbers that a scholarship would, be sensible for. I mean, all of these factors are definitely going to help her admissions case, sure, and also her scholarship case. I mean, all this stuff makes her look like a great candidate. So I think you're right.
Yeah.
It cuts both ways, but I think it cuts more in her favor than it does the other way. Email goes on and says, I've learned from your podcast about the wisdom of applying to schools where I don't necessarily envision going, just to gauge my market value and give me some leverage. I intend to apply to my undergrad alma mater, which is in another state where I grew up, as well as a few other schools in that state. But I will probably also apply to other schools where I have no connection whatsoever, but where my scores are in line with their admissions profile. Perhaps it's my anxiety speaking. Will those schools, quote, see through this attempt, figuring me to not be seriously willing to relocate, though I would in many instances, and be stingy with their offers as a result? Should I address this in my personal statement or addendum in some way? Yeah, I say no to all that.
Yeah, I would just apply, and do exactly what you're doing. See if there's some interest and maybe use it as leverage. And if they, quote, see through that and decide not to offer you a scholarship, well, then that's a lost opportunity. But I don't think that's necessarily going to be true for every school. That's part of it, is just seeing what they'll do.
I mean, I think you're overthinking it here, for sure. Nobody cares about your application more than you do. Nobody thinks about your application more than you do. So I think the schools are just, they're going to see your LSAT and your GPA and your work experience or whatever, and they're going to be like, oh, this is a really good candidate. Let's offer her a scholarship and see if she'll come here. Right? Like, why would they not offer money if they don't think you're going to take it? That's just silly. That there's no reason for them. The offer only matters if you take it. So why would they not offer you money?
Yeah, I think they would be concerned about their yield, right? So, but that's the thing is you're just applying to several of these schools, and some of them may say no, but some of them may say yes, and then you have that
Yeah.
in your back pocket. And I would apply to schools that you could remotely see yourself attending. I don't know that I'd waste my time and money on schools that
Yeah,
there's no way in hell that I'd
exactly.
go to. So
I might have said in the past, just sort of being extreme, I might have said, like, hey, I might apply to a school that I had no intention of going to. But I don't think I really mean that. I think, because that's the other piece of advice that I would give her is to say, hey, why wouldn't you why wouldn't you at least entertain an offer? Right? I mean,
mhm.
I understand you have a family and whatever, but I mean, if a school's going to give you a full ride plus a stipend plus books plus whatever, which they sometimes do for really good candidates, that whole package might be worth 200 grand. I mean, maybe it is worth moving for 200 grand. I don't know.
Yeah. Shake things up, change the family dynamic. I mean, it's not everyone's situation is different, but sometimes people do
Right.
that
It
on
could be good
purpose,
for the
right?
kids, like the kids might be socially better off for the rest of their lives if they have to change schools when they're young, so that they just get used to it, so that they get used to the fact that sometimes they
Mhm.
have to go make an entirely new set of friends. I mean, I don't know. I never did that. I
Yeah.
stayed at my same school for like my entire life, and then I ended up having like social anxiety problems for the rest of my life. So I would just at least think about, I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Oh, they don't admit you. So,
Yeah.
or they do admit you and make you this crazy offer that makes you start to actually have to think about moving. I mean, that's a good problem
Yeah.
to have. Okay. Email goes on. My follow-on question is this. The school in my city that I'm hoping to attend is well within my reach score-wise and is a highly regarded school in my region. My first LSAT score, which is June 2016, was at their 75th percentile, and my undergraduate GPA is slightly above their 75th. Are those ranges typically indicative of a scholarship offer? Yes.
Yes.
It's a necessary condition for me, she says. I'm retaking in December so that I can apply to my undergrad alma mater and have more options. Given all this, should I apply to the local law school now and then alert them to the new score when it comes out in January, or should I just wait to apply until then? I've heard mixed opinions on timing of applications. Appreciate your insight. Thank you, Rebecca.
I would say apply now to the local school because she has the scores that would get her, that would likely get her a scholarship. And I think that scholarship now is going to depend a little bit more on the time, like applying early when the money is
Yeah, I
available.
agree. And if they make her an offer that is not, yeah, I totally agree. Get the ball rolling now. I mean, they're already going to maybe offer you a full ride just based on the fact that you're 75th and 75th percentile.
And even if they don't, like you said, I think what you were going to say is then when the score comes out, if it's higher, then it's like, well, they would have accepted her. So now her application is going to be active, and then they might
Yeah,
reevaluate.
and she could even, like, when they give her an offer, if they give her an offer that she doesn't like, she could always say, hey, it's just I want to let you guys know that I am retaking the LSAT on December 3rd because I'm pretty sure I can score higher, and the reason why I'm doing that is that a scholarship is an absolute necessity for me, and I'm just not going to law school without a better scholarship offer. And
Yeah.
then especially if that's true, if that's really the actual story, that's a very powerful negotiating stance to take.
Mm-hmm.
Even more powerful when the score comes back and it is actually higher. But I think go ahead and apply now and just because you've already got a great score on record, right? It's already a really competitive score, so go ahead and apply now. And then if you need to tell them about that later score, you can.
Yeah.
I guess that's that. Thank you very much, Rebecca, for writing in.
Cool.
Where did this question come from? On the blog?
Yeah, this is on our blog. So thinkinglsat.com, someone posted this question.
It says, hey, dudes, do you have any thoughts on if it's a good idea to write about a specific area of law that you intend to work in within your personal statement? or stay more broad? Thanks.
So my reaction to this is that it's not an either or situation, that you either write about a specific area of law that you intend to work in, or quote, stay more broad. Like, I don't, first of all, I don't think that she should be writing about a specific area of law. I mean, I guess it depends on what she means about what she's going to say about that. If she has a lot of experience in it and she knows that he or she wants to go into that area of law, then maybe it would make sense to talk about it. But I guess I'm just worried about someone writing about that area of law as if they know that much about it, because most people don't know, and even if they do, that's not the point of the personal statement.
Well, I mean, it can be if you have actual work experience in that area, maybe, right? Like if you've worked in a specific field of law in some firm for 3 years. Like I have this buddy, he's a former student of mine who's in law school now, and he had like a 10 or 15 year career negotiating like workers' comp claims before applying to law school. And in that case, it makes all the sense in the world. I mean, he knew exactly what he was going to do when he got out of law school, and just very credibly could talk about, hey, I've been already negotiating. Like, I know these lawyers. I know the judges. I know exactly what this field of law is. And the reason why I'm here is because I need, you know, a JD, blah, 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 so I can actually whatever. And in that case, it just makes perfect sense. But I read a lot of very naive sounding personal statements where it's like just, you know, people talking about how they want to go into immigration law because they care about the plight of immigrants. And it's like, I know it's a sad story, and I believe you. I believe that that's why you're here. The problem is that, you know, there's so many people who are deluded into thinking that they're actually going to have a career working in immigration law. And
or even know what it's like, right? Like having an emotional connection with a problem and then planning to work as an attorney with that problem may be two totally different
they met
realities.
One attorney who worked for their family, you know, and they met that attorney one time for 30 minutes, and now like that's their, you know, that this is my motivation for going to law school. I don't know. It's just lame. It's so easy for anyone to say that, for one thing.
So if you have a lot of experience in this particular area of law and you know what's going on, and this is definitely what you want to do when you graduate, then it does make sense. But even if you have some experience, and especially if you have no experience in a particular area of law, then you probably shouldn't write on how you plan to do that, because I think most law schools expect students to come in and actually experiment with a lot of different types of classes and topics and figure out what they will ultimately do, and not necessarily know from the beginning. It's almost like you're saying, a little naive to pretend to know what's going on, unless you have that experience.
Those ones are very annoying. I feel like the ones that just are kind of pretentious, like acting like they know exactly what's up when it's pretty obvious that they don't, because they don't have any work experience in a law firm. So just be really careful to, you know, you don't want to be telling them what law school is like. You know, you don't want to be telling them what everything you're going to get out of law school, because you don't really know. You definitely don't really know what type of legal practice you're going to be in. It's something like 50% of all the people who go to law school never practice law to begin with. And then of the people who do practice law, like almost everyone ends up changing their field when they go to law school. There are just hundreds of fields of law that you don't even know exist until you start law school. Right? Or even if you did, you would have no idea what it means. Like intellectual
Yeah.
property, for example, there is almost not really even a field called intellectual property. That's like 10 different things. and no one knows what it means. I mean, you, in the very, very broad abstract, you have some idea what it means, but you don't know what the practice of IP law looks like. Unless you've worked in an IP firm for 3 years, and then maybe you do. But it's, I would just say very much be careful. What should we need to, says, too much pressure to come up with an awesome pseudonym. I'll leave that up to you guys. Surprise me. I was going to go with like Spicoli or like Bill and Ted.
Spicoli?
From Fast Times at Ridgemont High, dude. He's like the stoner
cool.
dude, Sean Penn in Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Okay.
Yeah. Or Bill and Ted from Bill and Ted's Excellent
Adventure.
Adventure.
To check that out.
Yeah, you got that.
Yeah, I remember that movie. Yeah, I'm not totally sealed off from the world yet.
So what should Spicoli write about then, if not some specific area of law?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I think one thing that you're trying to tell someone something about yourself that hopefully reveals a level of maturity and usually a commitment to learning or whatever. And hopefully you do that by telling a story or two that reveals, it doesn't have to be a story, but it often I think is, and it can be an effective way of conveying these things without saying them, that reveals how you are mature, how you recognize that the world is not as simple as we often think it is when we're growing up. I was just reading a personal statement the other day about someone who talked about how growing up he had come to view the authority, such as police officers and the legal system in general, prosecutors, so on, as sort of negative, as people who are enforcing things that shouldn't be enforced and basically repressing people. And as he was saying this in his personal statement and talking about experiences that had kind of reinforced this view, I was starting to get nervous that it was just going to end and be police. Like, and not just the police, but the whole, system, the legal system in general. And, but at the end, he pivoted and talked about his recent work experience in an agency in the federal government that deals with legal and law enforcement and stuff like that, and how much good this agency was doing, and the people that he worked with, and their motivations and their desire to solve very serious problems, and that had changed his perspective, not to the point where he now thinks everything is great, but he had a much more realistic and nuanced view of the whole legal system, that it's got its problems, that there are people who abuse power in the system, but there are also a lot of people in the system who are really trying to help those who are repressed. And so it's this, dual-edged sword, and that sort of pivot in the personal statement just made it so much better, something that was actually very valuable. Like, oh wow, someone who's going to read this is going to come away recognizing you as someone who is thoughtful, reflective, and understanding of the world in a much more nuanced, not simplistic way.
Just make sure to telegraph that pivot is coming, pretty high in the piece.
Yeah, I actually wondered about that. Yeah, that might be valuable. I also thought there might be some value in just how it did change. Like, it made it more of an impact. Like, oh, this person really does get it, because you were anticipating them not to. I mean, I guess you run the risk of someone sort of abandoning the statement before it's done, but it wasn't very long.
Yeah,
so.
There's a lot of ways you could do it, right? There's a lot of ways you could sort of put just a little hint that you used to feel
a little
this
hint,
way,
yeah,
and you can describe for sure.
Yeah.
You can describe how you used to feel, but you want to make it so that it used to feel that way, and then because otherwise, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, just you don't want people to that. You know, you got to remember that they might be reading this statement in like 2 minutes, and there is no guarantee that they're going to really sit there and read every single word. So I'm sure most of them do. I've known some very thoughtful admissions people who I, really believed they were sitting there actually really poring over every page of an application. But I think in some cases there's going to be some people doing some skimming and you want to make sure you don't look like you're going to be a problem. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I mean, I generally tell people to have a beer or two and write a really shitty first draft of a personal statement. And that's the way I do all my writing. So, just to like get it out there, right? Because it's important that you just get the words out on the page. And
for sure,
the questions, like if I was going to give somebody a writing prompt, there are 2 questions that I try to get them to answer. And one is why you, and the other is why law school. So why you is, what is it about you, your personality, your background? Why should they pick you over everyone else? And then why law school is sort of like, why are you choosing law school over everything else you could choose? You've made the case that you're such a great candidate. Well, then why are you coming here instead of doing something else? So I think if you just do some free writing maybe on those 2 topics, write a bunch of bullets and then flesh them out a little bit and just get a big shitty first draft out there. And then you'll find something. There's a lot of ways you can tell that story. I mean, as far as the like why you part, that's what so many people are missing. They love writing about like, oh, I'm going to be this kind of lawyer. Or, oh, this other person that I interacted with in my life has such a sad story. And it's like, okay, great. But why you? Who are you? Or they'll like, they'll rehash their entire resume, which is like, they already have your resume. You don't need to just go through a chronological history of your life. They're reading this because they want to learn who you are as a person. It's supposed to be a personal statement, right? A statement about you, something personal about you that shows some aspect of your personality, some aspect of, it could be an anecdote of something. I mean, I think it should have like factual anecdotes in there. It should have like a story, and it should be something that they can't just immediately see by looking at your resume. Yeah. But beyond that, man, there's a million different. I would say, don't you think, Ben, that like for any person, they should be able to write 10 different personal statements?
Yeah, and as we were talking, actually, I started thinking about this whole process when you said you suggest that people take 2 drinks and then just start writing. I think that is like there's something about not writing something that's perfect that I think prevents a lot of people from writing. Like, unless it's perfect, they feel very hesitant about putting it on paper.
I mean, it's part of the reason why I'm like an alcoholic, dude. I've written 6 books, and I pretty much go to a bar. I mean, that's like how I get it out there. Now, I don't edit that way, and good writing comes from good, ruthless, repeated editing. But if I just sit there dead sober staring at the blank page, it can be tough to get words out there. And so, it's a crutch, and I probably shouldn't do it. I'm not really advising everybody to develop an alcohol problem. But, there's nothing wrong with a glass of wine and just get it out there on the page, or whatever you have to do to get it out there on the page.
Yeah, so this is what I was thinking. There's value in just getting something down so that you can then mess with that or use that as a springboard for other ideas, right? If you can just get some stuff on the paper, then you can work with that. And I was thinking that, and I haven't ever tried this before, this is just a thought I was had as you were talking, but imagine yourself going to an informal interview with a admissions officer, and you sit down and they say, hey, tell me about yourself. I think there could be value in just taking out your phone and using the recording feature and just record, just hit record and start talking, because you'd have to start talking in that situation. You couldn't sit there and say, oh, well, let me get back to you. I'll talk to you later once I've thought of something nice. You just have to start talking, and you might not like what you record, but it's going to force you to start, spewing out ideas and things to say. And you might do that every morning for a few days. And then one of those days you're going to hit on something that you do really want to talk about. And then you could start writing about that, or even take some of your audio transcripts and start putting that down on paper.
That's a great tip, because it might actually get people to write a little bit more the way they speak, which is just, I don't know why people are such shitty writers, because they just go into this stuffy, formal, like, oh, I am writing sentences now. And it's like, dude, you don't talk like that. So don't write like that. Go ahead and just write in a conversational tone, first person conversational kind of a tone. And tell me a story, hey, tell me something. What was your favorite class you took in college? Tell me something scary that happened to you at some point in your life. Tell me something funny that happened at your first job. Like any of those kinds of prompts could turn into, what's your nickname? Why do they call you that? Who's your favorite family member and why? I don't know. Who's your best friend? Tell me why. What is it about them? And just get some shit out there. But for your 2-page personal statement, I mean, the easiest way to write a 2-page personal statement is to write 6 pages worth of bullshit and then just narrow it down to the 2 pages of gold that's there. And it's not that hard. It shouldn't be that hard. I mean, I would think that in a couple weeks you ought to be able to go from 0 to basically perfect personal statement. I mean, you're going to have to write a bunch of bullshit. You're going to have to edit it down, put it away for a while, come back to it, edit it some more, maybe start over a time or two. Then it just needs to be perfectly copy edited. And for that, I mean, I would recommend really paying someone for the copy editing, or just give it to 5 different friends. But like, somebody in the end has to have the ability to perfectly copy edit it. And it might not be you. I mean, in fact, most applicants that I see, it's probably not them.
Here's one piece of advice I'd give to everyone, and I give to everyone who asks me for tips on their personal statement. Once you've settled on a personal statement and you like the story and this is what you're going to say, read it at least 3 times out loud. And as you read it, you're going to cut phrases down to either nothing or one word. So, for example, someone might write, there was a lot of chaos. Well, you could replace a lot of with much. But you don't realize that when you're just writing. But that's what happens, is sometimes you cut them down the first run through, and then you read it again, and you're like, I actually don't even need that. Yeah. So you just cut it out entirely. And this is how you can get a statement down to a page and a half and still have a ton of meaning, because you've just gotten rid of all the fluff that you have when you're just talking. But I agree 100%. You should start from the way you talk and just like clean it up, as opposed to sounding all stuffy. And the other thought I had was that this is kind of like taking the LSAT several times. If you could take the LSAT 10 times and then choose the score that was your best score, that everyone would do that, right? Like you said, you should probably write 5 or 6 different personal statements and then just choose the one that's the best, rather than trying to create the best one.
Yeah, or outline from 5 or 6 of them, just some bullet points.
You could do bullet points. I think there's value in just kind of just starting to write, or just starting to talk and just spew, just don't stop. Don't make it great. Just write it. And then once you're done, say, oh yeah, this one sounds good. Or even send it to a couple people and say, hey, of these 2, which one do you think is more interesting or compelling?
Yeah, awesome.
Cool.
Last email, and then we'll jump into some logical reasoning questions. Jimbo says, howdy. I recently learned about your podcast, and I enjoy listening to it. I'm currently a senior in high school applying for colleges. A lot of the colleges that I'm applying to offer accelerated 3-3 law programs, where I would have an accelerated undergraduate degree with fewer electives and then start law school for my 4th year at college. I would receive a bachelor's degree and a JD in 6 years rather than 7. I'm very interested in these programs. What would you say are the pros and cons of doing a 3-3 program compared to the traditional 4-3? I'm a good student with a solid GPA, cumulative 4.0 weighted, whatever that means in high school. I mean, some kids have 6.0 or 5.0s in high school, so I don't really know what that is going to mean for these programs. And test scores, 1,400 on the new SAT. I think that's pretty good, right? Is it out of 1,600 now, the SAT?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm very confident that I'll be able to get into the programs. It's just a matter of if I decide it's a good idea or not. Thanks a lot, Jimbo. What do you think?
Well, I wonder what the level of commitment is here. If by applying to these programs, he's essentially committing to 6 years, I would say don't do it. Do the 4-3 and go figure out what you want to do with your life in your 4 years of college. I would take a diverse set of classes and decide that you really do want to do law school and then go to 3 years of law school rather than committing to 6 years now, having not taken a bunch of classes that Jimbo will eventually take and learn new interests and skills and maybe decide to do something totally different.
So you're saying that if it's like if once you start, you're like committed to the full 6 years? Yeah, I would agree because, I mean, he's got to be maybe 18 now. And so he's committing to something, like he's committing to 1/3 of his life so far is what he's making this commitment to. Right. And I mean, like you change so much in the ages 18 through 24, or at least hopefully you do. So yeah, that does sound like just an awful, that's a nasty commitment for a kid to be making.
Well, at the very least, maybe he goes to school and he's doing 4 years of school and he takes a bunch of different classes. He majors in something totally different from law, like chemistry or whatever. And then he's like, yes, this confirms that I want to become a lawyer, maybe an IP lawyer or whatever. But great. Then he goes into the program knowing this is exactly what he wants to do with his life. But I just feel like there's so many other opportunities out there that are so much more interesting than law. And law can be super interesting for people, but I would want to go to school and experience that.
I guess that's what we would have to know from him is just how certain are you that law school is really the thing for you and why? How do you know that? If he's got nothing but lawyers in his family and if they have great careers and if he's been to work with them every day for his entire life and he knows exactly what he's getting himself into, then okay, I could see how, well, this is your inevitable path. Why not get on that path and just make it the shortest route you can possibly take, right? I mean, some 18-year-olds are way more mature than I was when I was 18. But
yeah, I would still be really hesitant, even if that was his family's. Like maybe even more so. Like he's been brainwashed into thinking this is like the end all be all. No offense to your family. He's got a 1,400
SAT too, which means that I don't think you can make that score if you're not good at math. And so he's actually like good at math, which means he might be able to do something sciencey. And I don't know, if I had it to do over again, I would absolutely take as much science stuff as I possibly could, like math and science and engineering, and just like I would be working on the space shuttle or something. I would not. If you have, I say this to my kids all the time, if you have any kind of a science and math brain, you should strongly consider using that science math brain. Be a doctor, cure cancer, do something good for the world. Yes, I know lawyers do sometimes do a lot of good for the world. The lawyers also are a huge pain in the ass for the world in a million different ways. And lawyers are not curing cancer. So yeah, Jimbo, if there's a chance that you can cure cancer, I would say absolutely check that out before. Law school will always be there. You can always just decide to do it later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you save a year. I don't think that's I really don't think that's significant.
Yeah. It's hilarious because ultimately my advice is probably like, dude, don't even go to, what are you doing going to college? You should be going good in an apprenticeship to work in a metal shop somewhere and work with your hands. Go to Alaska and do something more interesting with your late teens and early 20s. Come back to school once you've realized what it is that you actually want to do with your life.
Yeah.
You don't really disagree with that, do you?
No, I would say, I mean, even just thinking about myself and my own experience with undergrad, I would enjoy it a lot more now, and I'd take classes that I was really interested in and just see it as an opportunity to learn. And so I think it's kind of hard to do that in retrospect, but if someone, say, graduated from high school and then just went to another country for a year and taught English or something, just got out there, saw a lot of different perspectives, and then came back and went to school, they might be even more invested in it than if they just kind of followed the treadmill, and like next, go, school. It just seems like, I don't know.
Yeah, totally. Then again, there are students who get great grades all through high school and really like it and are doing well, and then they're going to go to college and also do really well. So it's hard for me not to be colored by my own, I've always been a shitty student. I was a shitty student. I got kind of mediocre grades in high school, and then I got shitty grades in college because I just wasn't engaged in it. I just cruised through, graduated in 4 years, but got very little out of it because I wasn't putting anything into it. And if that's what you're going to do, then I would absolutely say, go do anything else. I should have enlisted in the National Guard or something. I should have been just get some discipline or work on seriously, go work in a lumber yard or something. Make myself do something for a while before then going back. And then maybe I would have gotten more out of my bachelor's degree, but it could be that Jimbo's one of those kids that's going to actually go and excel. So I don't know.
Well, I don't think he's not going to excel. I think it's just having different experiences can make that more valuable, and more effective use of your time. I think part of Jimbo and a lot of people are in the situation where I should say, think they know where they want to go. And so this is the fastest way to get there. And yeah, it is. But there's also value in slowing down and saying, okay, let me go get some experience in some other totally different thing, shake things up, then come back and be like, yes, this is exactly what I want to continue doing. Or, maybe I want to actually kind of pursue a different path, and I'm still going to go to school. I'm still going to do really well, but I'm going to study,
Yeah, the school's just always going to be there. I mean, I guess parents have a way of pushing people into it because they want to see their kid, I have to make sure that Jimbo turns out to be a college graduate, so we're going to encourage him to go straight to college and all that. But if you can talk your parents into the idea that, hey, I'm a good student and I'm going to be a good student and I'm going to kick ass in school, but I need to be a server for a year and I need to travel, go to Europe and live on my own for a while and just do something for a while just to get some sort of life under my belt before I start spending all this money and time in these certifications. Because that's really what they are, right? These degrees are just, you're paying someone to stamp your resume, essentially. And yeah, you could get a lot more out of it with a little bit more perspective.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Jimbo, for writing in. That's it for the emails. Everybody remember, you can always get in touch with us, help@thinkinglsat.com. And I guess it's time to do some questions from the June 2007 exam.
Yeah.
So for anybody who's new, we've been working our way slowly through the June 2007 LSAT. If you just Google June 2007 LSAT, the test will pop right up. It is free. And we are in section 3, which is logical reasoning. And we left off last time in episode 71. We did question number 5. So today we're going to do question number 6 and possibly 7. We'll see how much time we have.
Cool.
So section 3 of the June 2007 test, logical reasoning, question number 6. You want to read it, Ben?
Yeah. So this says Jablonski.
Yeah.
Is that how you'd say that? Jablonski, who owns a car dealership, has donated cars to driver education programs at area schools for over 5 years. Okay. Nice person. Maybe she's doing it for promotion to get her name out there. Who knows? She found the statistics on car accidents to be disturbing. And she wanted to do something to encourage better driving in young drivers. Some members of the community have shown their support for this action by purchasing cars from Jablonski's dealership. Okay, so I don't see any argument here. I just see someone doing something, and she seems to be motivated for a good reason, and it seems to have this side benefit for her.
We don't know that she didn't think that might have happened. But I think we have to accept it as a premise that she does find the statistics on car accidents to be disturbing. And it's another premise that she wanted to do something to encourage better driving in young drivers. And she has donated cars for over 5 years to these driver education programs at area schools. So I think we have to accept it as fact that she's at least partially motivated here by altruism.
Yeah, I agree.
That's not to say that she's not also motivated by money.
No, yeah, she could be motivated by both. It's like a win-win.
We just don't know. We assume she likes money. We assume she likes business at her dealership. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So, since there's no argument, it's really not surprising to see what this question is, which is, which one of the following propositions is best illustrated by the passage? I would call this an inference question. I think you would call this a must-be-true question. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Yep. And so I would say this is of the most supported variety, but in any case, the point is that we're looking for an answer that is supported by the passage better than the other 4 answers, and almost certainly going to be something that must be true or really close to it. Now, answer choice A says the only way to reduce traffic accidents is through driver education programs. This is definitely wrong.
Well, I mean, it just doesn't have to be true at all based on the facts we were given. I mean, I think we know that I think one way to reduce traffic accidents is probably through driver education programs based on the given facts, but not the only way, because what if we made driving completely illegal?
Yep. Totally. So this is one thing about these answers is that they will probably either introduce the wrong answers will either introduce new ideas that weren't addressed, or they'll go too far, or do both. And this one definitely goes too far by saying the only way. Very strong language. Doesn't have to be true.
Yeah, I like to. One thing I like to do on the must be true questions is I like to try to tell little stories on the wrong answers. Like if I can tell a story that would make A false without making the given facts false, then A is not the answer for a must be true question. So, a story like, well, what if we made all driving just 100% illegal? Or what if we mandated auto drive cars? Or what if we made the speed limit 2 miles an hour everywhere? Wouldn't all those things reduce traffic accidents potentially? What if we put cops on every single street corner? And so any one of those stories makes A false, then A just does not have to be true based on the given facts.
Yep. B, altruistic actions sometimes have positive consequences for those who perform them. This this is almost certainly correct. Haven't read the rest, but she did an altruistic thing. It sometimes, which just means at least once, had a positive consequence for Jablonski, the dealership owner.
But
this
Ben,
seems like the
you
correct
don't know
answer.
that it was a positive consequence for her?
Well, I am making that assumption
It
that
doesn't
by
say it in the facts that it was
they
a
have
positive consequence.
shown their support. Yeah, I'm making an assumption here that by supporting this action and purchasing cars from her dealership, that's a positive consequence for her, and I don't think it's an unreasonable
You're allowed
assumption.
to use your brain. I mean, people get so caught up, like they get so, well, it doesn't, there's no premise there that says that if someone purchases a car from her dealership, that's a positive consequence. It's like, that is such a short leap. We're allowed to make those short leaps like that. That's just a no-brainer. It's just obvious. Yeah. Imagine what a judge would say if you were like, well, it doesn't have to necessarily help her when someone purchases a car from her dealership, Your Honor. And the judge is like, shut the fuck up. Yeah. Okay. So we're liking B a lot.
We're liking B a lot. So A is crossed out, B is open. C, young drivers are the group most likely to benefit from driver education programs. Again, I'm going to focus in on the strong language here. We did briefly talk about young people, didn't we? I feel like she said, yes, she wanted to do something to encourage better driving in young drivers. So she did talk about young drivers, but when it says they are the group, quote, most likely to benefit from driver education programs, I'm thinking, I have no idea about other groups. So
yeah, and to make that false, well, no, maybe actually young people think they're bulletproof and don't pay attention to teachers. They're tired and bored from school all day, so they actually don't benefit that much from driver education programs. In fact, if you give a driver education program to a 40-year-old, maybe they would be the ones who are, now they have like families and kids and jobs and responsibilities, and they've started to realize that they're not going to live forever. And then maybe those are the ones that go, oh, I should follow farther behind when it's raining. I see. Like, that could be true without all of these facts being false. So because C can be false, then it's not a must be true.
Yeah. D, it is usually in one's best interest to perform actions that benefit others. Okay, again, I'm going to focus in on the logical terms that are strong, which would be usually and best. But just starting with usually, we know that it's in her, not necessarily her best interest, but in her interest to perform these actions in this particular case. Do we know that's usually the case? In other words, most of the time?
Yeah, in all situations that don't even have anything to do with donating cars to driver education programs at area schools when you own a car dealership. I mean, I think it's hard to argue with D in real life. You end up looking like a dick if you argue with D in real life. But, something like, is it really in your best interest to give your car keys to some guy on the street who wants a car? I don't know. I mean, maybe. But that doesn't have to be true. So I don't think we can pick D. Overbroad, especially the word usually. Yeah.
Yep. E, an action must have broad community support if it is to be successful. You can't do anything out there. If you want something to be successful, you better have broad community support.
That's maybe the worst answer. If I decide that I want to have a piece of pizza, I don't need any broad community support in order to be successful in that action. It's not that hard to go get myself some pizza. So, no, I don't see how E is justified by these facts. B, look back at B. Does it not seem boring and obvious?
and weak and thus good.
Weak and boring and obvious and exactly what the passage said. So that's going to be the answer. Sadly, some people aren't going to miss it because they don't know what altruistic means.
How frequently do you run into
Pretty
that
frequently,
problem?
I run into the problem of people having poor vocabularies, and it's a shame. I mean, I would say that's a sign that you potentially might be barking up the wrong tree. You know, if you find on the LSAT that there are a lot of words you don't understand, I mean, I'm going to find words, right? You probably find words, Ben. One here and there, you find a word that you're like, not quite sure what that is, but I can probably get it from context. In this case, if you had no clue what altruism is, you can't really get that from context here. Not from reading just answer choice B. And so then you might be in trouble. But if you missed this one for that reason, I mean, that's a bit of a red flag. That's kind of scary.
Yeah, altruism, by the way, if it is a word that you don't know, you must know it because it will come up time and time again on the LSAT.
Yeah.
They love it.
Yep. Okay. Cool.
Should we do Antonio, the next one?
I think we should.
Okay. Antonio. One can live a life of moderation by never deviating from the middle course. Okay, I don't know what the middle course is, but I could kind of imagine that. Not having extremes.
And, just sort of like what I would expect a common sense understanding of a life of moderation to be. Right? A life of,
sure.
What is moderation? Moderation is not drinking too much, not eating too much, not doing anything too much. And so never deviating from the middle course, that would be like, we all have friends that are like that. Ben, you're probably more like that than I'm like that. Just sort of, steady. Don't really overdo it. Just kind of stay on the middle path. Be sensible. Be healthy. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. It's not so much that I might guess what the middle course is. I also just think it's kind of a weird phrase, like the middle course, like that could be, who knows? But anyways, doesn't matter. So this is what Antonio is saying. But then one loses the joy of spontaneity and misses the opportunities that come to those who are occasionally willing to take great chances or to go too far.
That's what I'm saying.
So it sounds like Antonio would prefer people to not live a life of moderation.
Yeah, I agree. He seems to be kind of shitting on this life of moderation, at least the way he's defined it. He's like, well, yeah, of course you could, only ever have a maximum of one drink with dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And you would be living a life of moderation by never deviating from that course. But then you would, of course, lose the joy of spontaneity and miss the opportunities that come from those who are willing to have 9 beers with dinner.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So Marla says, but one who, in the interests of moderation, never risks going too far is actually failing to live a life of moderation. Mm-hmm. One must be moderate even in one's moderation.
I like that.
Okay.
That's a famous quote about temperance. Temperance in moderation.
There's a famous quote? No. Enlighten me.
Boy, I would have to Google it. It's exactly like that you should be temperance, which is moderation, right? But it's the phrase is like temperance in moderation. That's basically the punchline. That it's like, yeah, you should do this, but you should also be moderate in the way you're being moderate, which is what Marla is saying.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So then it says Antonio and Marla disagree over. So do you have any prediction as to what they disagree about?
I do, because I could imagine Antonio listening to Marla, and I think I caught it like halfway through Marla's statement.
Okay.
I was imagining Antonio raising his eyebrow.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually picturing Antonio Banderas raising his eyebrow.
Yeah. I think it is
I
Banderas.
think it is
Mm-hmm.
Antonio Banderas.
Yeah.
He was because when she said because she seems like she's right off the bat she's disagreeing with him, right? She says, but one who, in the interest of moderation, never risks going too far is actually failing to live a life of moderation.
Mm-hmm.
But Antonio's first sentence was, one can live a life of moderation by never deviating from the middle course.
Yep.
So Antonio is like, hey, here's what moderation means. It means never deviating.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says, but that's a bad idea.
Yep.
Marla says, actually, that's not even a life of moderation when you do that.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're being immoderate in the way you're being moderate. You can be so moderate that you're being extreme about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what you're hinting at here is that there's kind of a clue in the fact that they both talk about this phrase, a life of moderation. So to disagree about something, they both have to talk about it.
Right. And it seems to me that Antonio has defined a life of moderation, or at least one way of living a life of moderation, is to be moderate all the time, 24/7. Right?
Yeah.
And Marla disagrees with that. Marla actually says, nope, if you do that, you're not actually living a life of moderation.
Yeah.
So it seems like they have disagreed on one definition of a life of moderation.
Yeah. So then let's see what we find.
Okay.
Answer choice A, whether it is desirable for people occasionally to take great chances in life. I think that's not what you predicted, and I think they both agree with that.
Yeah, Antonio says yes to that pretty clearly. And then Marla is all about, hey, yeah, you've got to be moderate even in your moderation. So maybe Marla didn't specifically take a position on, taking great chances. But if anything, it almost seems like she would agree with A.
Yeah.
And we need one speaker to clearly say yes and the other speaker to clearly say no. So if they're going to agree, that's not the answer. Or if one of them's not going to take a position, then that's also not the answer.
Yeah.
So I don't think it can be A.
All right. B says, what a life of moderation requires of a person. This is what you predicted. So I would keep it open.
Yeah. I could push back on it, but...
Okay. Yeah.
Well, I like it. I think it's the answer because I think they're arguing about the definition of a life of moderation. The word requires makes me skeptical because it seems to me that Antonio said that it would be sufficient to never deviate from the middle course. I don't know if Antonio says it's necessary that you never deviate from the middle course.
Yeah.
And if they're going to get all, stick up their ass all the time about the difference between sufficient and necessary, then that seems a little bit like a misstatement of what Antonio really said.
Yeah.
If he had said a life of moderation is never deviating from the middle course, then B would be better justified.
Yeah, I agree. No, excellent point. I think just moving quickly, I'd keep it open. And then if something else came up, then I'd probably go back and say, wait a sec. Oh,
yeah. The right answer doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be the best one. And this is a question that's in the first 10. My guess is that the wrong answers are really, really wrong. And so B is still the closest to what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Even if it's not 100% technically exactly what Antonio said, you could still, it's probably the fairest one to say, hey, this is what you guys are arguing about.
Yeah. C, whether it is possible for a person to embrace other virtues along with moderation.
Huh? Other virtues like altruism?
Okay, maybe other virtues of altruism or spontaneity, maybe.
Yeah.
The problem is it's still too broad because...
Yeah, I mean, just neither of them even say anything about other virtues. So,
Well, if you look at spontaneity as a virtue, maybe
oh,
Antonio
I
is
see what you're
saying
saying. Oh, okay. I gotcha. So maybe Antonio says he might be saying no
to
to
some
C.
virtues.
Yeah, but he doesn't address all other virtues. So
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, it's going to be hard to make a case for them arguing about C.
Yeah. D. How often a person ought to deviate from the middle course in life. So Antonio would say, well, not how often, but I think Antonio would say you should deviate at least sometime. And I think Marla would say the same thing.
Yeah, it seems to me that they both are saying a non-zero amount of deviation, right?
Yep.
Some,
Yeah.
which means one or more. And they're not arguing about the specifics of how often you should deviate. Or not, if one of them said zero and the other one said sometimes, then you might be able to pick D.
Mm-hmm.
But they're both saying, nah, you should deviate sometimes. So I don't see how we could pick D.
Yeah. E. Whether it is desirable for people to be moderately spontaneous. I like how they use the word moderate and spontaneous together.
Yeah, I mean, that's one that's just like it's just the words. It's got the words. They're there, but they're just arranged in a way that it just doesn't really make sense based on what they were talking about.
Yeah, they're trying to like conflate two ideas, moderation and spontaneity together. Moderately spontaneous. Spontaneous. Why can't I say this word right now? Spontaneous. Jeez. Okay. Anyways, they're combining those two words. And so it's just like, I remember you saying once a long time ago, it's kind of like putting words in a blender.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just a bunch of mush just comes out. And it definitely catches people who are like, I was laughing about this either last time or the time before, where people are just like, well, it says moderately. Antonio said spontaneity, spontaneous. It says that. It says the words. So I just picked it because it says moderate, spontaneous right here. And it's like, yeah, I know, but what is moderately spontaneous? Antonio never said anything about being moderately spontaneous. Also, not to mention, Marla never mentioned spontaneity at all.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he's pretty bad. Laughable.
So it looks like it's B.
Yeah, even though it shouldn't say requires there.
Yeah.
But whatever. It's still the best answer. Good test takers, everybody would get this one right. Even though B is imperfect, everybody who's scoring 160 or 165 is definitely getting this one right. So I can't really argue with the question that much.
Yeah, sometimes I have these conversations with people who are doing pretty well. They're understanding what's going on with the test in a lot of cases and in a lot of different questions. And we'll have a long discussion either in class or in tutoring about why the correct answer has problems. And I will be conceding a lot of the problems that they point out. Like, the passage never said that directly, or that word is a little bit different from the word that they used. You got a good point there. But at the end of, all of that discussion, it's like, well, can you tell me the answer that you chose? Because you can't just pick at the correct answer until it's dead. You have to explain why you chose the answer you chose. And the problem there is I guarantee you going to be worse than all of the problems that you've mentioned combined.
Yeah, I'm laughing because I have that same discussion with people. It's usually people who are scoring like 160s, but not yet 170s.
Yeah.
And they like to argue with the test and get so upset about it and just say that B has to be conclusively wrong because of that one word.
Mm-hmm.
And they will just perseverate on it, just like they'll never shut up about it, and they just can't let go of it. And it's like, all right, dude, but here's the thing. anybody who's scoring 170 would have got that right.
Yeah.
It's not that hard. It's the best answer. It's just the best answer.
Yeah.
I agree with you. There's something wrong with it. I totally agree with you. But what else are you going to pick? Mm-hmm. Really? You're going to make a case here for A or C or D or E over B? Mm-hmm. That's what you're going to try to do? And if you just keep coming back to, well, B has this problem, I know it does. I know it does. But it's the best of a bad lot. Mm-hmm. And you should just accept that that's the instructions, is to pick the best answer. It doesn't say pick the perfect answer. It says pick the best answer.
Yeah, they need to apply those same reasoning skills to the answer they chose.
Right. I know. Yeah, it's like, sure, B has something wrong with it, and it could be a lot wrong with it, but it's not as wrong as these other horrible answers. Look what you pick. I mean, how can you? Are you really saying that they're arguing about how often a person ought to deviate from the middle course? It's just far. That's like so far fetched. That's like not even close. So B is definitely the best, the closest, the best fit, and you just gotta pick it and move on.
Hey, can we rewind for a second here and go back to the word you said? Now I can't even remember it. It started with P.
Perseveration.
Perseveration. Yeah.
People perseverate.
Yes. Would you like to elaborate?
Yeah. You know what, Ben? This is the second time you've asked me about this word.
I was wondering if it's that word I asked you about when I was in Costa Rica.
I realized, well, when I said it, I was like, oh shit, that's that same annoying word that Ben asked me about last time. Yeah.
Okay.
I think perseverate.
Well, obviously, I've learned it and I use it all the time now.
Oh, you do?
You wouldn't believe it.
Oh
no, I don't. I have no clue. So perseverate. Yeah, can you remind me?
Well,
this is when Anne Levine was on the show, right?
Yeah,
I do remember that conversation.
It's so it's a lot like persevere, but persevere has like positive connotations and perseverate has negative connotations.
Ooh, I like that.
I mean,
Maybe I will start using it now.
I'm not a linguist by any means, but no, like when if like people who have some sort of like mental illness, or if something really bad happened to you in your life and you get upset about it, and people would say that you are perseverating on or perseverating about that one issue, like you can't let go of it. That's what perseverate means.
So I'm reading the definition here. It says to repeat or prolong an action, thought, or utterance after the stimulus that prompted it has ceased.
Huh. Yeah. I mean, like repetitive thoughts that you can't get rid of. Yeah. That would be perseverating. Or continuing to repeatedly ask me that this says required and that makes it 100% wrong. And I'm like, no, because I've already granted you the point that it is an imperfect answer choice and that our job is to pick the best one. And then when you say again, but it says requires. When we keep doing laps and laps and laps of the same exact thing, that's perseveration.
Yeah, I like it. Cool. Please, all listeners, start using perseverate in your everyday speech.
Yeah.
It was more popular in the 1930s and 1970s, and it's time for a revival. Well, starting here with the Thinking LSAT.
So, do I sound like a grandpa or something when I say that? Is there a more modern word? Because I really do hate using super fancy words when I could have used something easier. I've complained before about people who say utilize when you could just say use instead.
Sure. What about needle? Would that be the same thing?
Needle. No. Well, to me, needle is like when you're intentionally trying to bother someone.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
You'd be needling them.
Oh, here we have what you said earlier. Perseverate. Most people who perseverate suffer from a brain injury, disorder, or illness.
Whoa.
And the word is most often used as a medical term. It's almost as if someone who perseverates gets stuck on a word or gesture and can't stop repeating it. Oh, great, Nathan. Now we might not want to use this word if this is the context of its most common usage.
But I intended it to have a little bit of stink on it. I mean, I was trying to say that people are perseverating on this, where I really do believe that they should, let it go. And if they have to see a medical professional in order to help them do that, there's no shame in that.
So they have other words here. They say like reiterate, but that has a more neutral connotation, I think. Repeat, restate, retell. Ingeminate, never heard that before. Have you heard that?
No.
So
yeah,
I can't think of a better one than with this negative. Although this definitely sounds like it has to do with mental illness, as opposed to.
Yeah, I did not mean that. I mean, I kind of.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah.
All right.
So you're saying that some of your students have a mental illness?
Oh, many. Many. We should one of these days we should tell some of our stories of our craziest students over the years. Obviously not naming names or anything, but I've been doing this long enough that I have had some pretty weird folks in my classes.
Have I mentioned the one where they asked if the answer key was at the back of the test?
Oh, you mean on the actual day of the test?
On the official test.
Oh, that's a good one.
It was in the middle, so we were about to start a proctored exam, and this person looks up and they say, "Will the official test have an answer key like we have today?" And I looked at her and I was like, I thought she was joking at first, and then she had a very sincere look on her face. So I was like, no, it won't. But then my next question is like, why? What's your plan?
Yeah, I had the kid who asked if he would be allowed to not only stand up during the test. He thought that he would perform better on the test if he were allowed to stand.
Okay. Standing desk is a trend.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I'm at a standing desk right now, actually.
Oh, you are? Wow.
Yeah, I love it. I go to Starbucks all the time to work too, because Starbucks has high tables and I can stand at the high tables at Starbucks. So I'm that guy. He wanted to stand during the test, but furthermore, he asked, in all seriousness, he asked me if he would be allowed to read aloud during the test.
Oh, no. Yeah.
So he wants to stand up and read aloud while he's taking the actual LSAT.
Yeah.
And I informed him that no, he would not. Although nowadays, maybe he could get special accommodations for that.
Yeah. Under the new legal framework, you might be able to get that. I just can't think through this unless I talk out loud.
Yep. I need a doctor to write me a note so I can do that.
Yeah. No, that's good stuff. So, do you have any exciting plans for this week?
Yeah, I'm actually playing golf today. I have a practice round today for a tournament that I'm playing in tomorrow. And then I'm going to Santa Barbara on Friday because I'm doing a promotional, like a free logic games class at UC Santa Barbara on Friday. Okay. By the way, cool. Listeners, if you are interested in having me come and yell at you and your friends on campus, I love doing that sort of thing. And I go out of my way actually to do little promotional classes on campus. So if you're part of a pre-law group and, especially if you're in Southern California or anywhere in California really, and you'd like to have me come visit your class, send me an email, nathan@foxlsat.com. And I would love to come visit you guys. Do you do that same sort of thing, Ben?
Not usually. I should probably do that more.
You don't need to because you're killing it so hard in DC.
It is kind of nice to be in DC. There's a lot of people who want to go to law school, even if they're not planning to practice law, because everybody on the Hill has a JD who's anybody. And so a lot of people who work on the Hill who don't have a JD are saying to themselves, look, if I want to go further, then I got to do that. And so there's just a lot of demand for LSAT in this area. So it's kind of nice.
Yeah, that must be nice. I'm here in LA where everyone cares about is CrossFit and yoga and green juice and auditions. So yeah, it's not quite the same sort of a market down here.
You could branch out. You could have like Fox LSAT next to your Fox juice stand. And like during the day do yoga, and then at night do LSAT, right?
They could take the test or take the class while they're in tanning beds.
Dude, I'd like to see you doing yoga. I think that should be your new venture.
Yoga? Yeah.
Like there'd be a lot of profanity. People go there to get like relaxed.
I just bend over. I bend over to stretch down. I'm like, fuck. Oh.
Yeah. I'm waiting, and now I'm going to be waiting for that.
Okay, I'll work on it.
Please.
How about you? You doing anything fun?
No, I just actually realized it was a stupid question to ask you because it's no, I'm interested in what you had to do, but I didn't have any response myself. So sometimes I'll do this in class. I'll ask people what, I don't know, whatever, like what do you guys eat for breakfast or whatever? And people are like, what do you eat for breakfast? I'm like, oh, actually, I don't, whatever, like nothing, or I eat yogurt. One thing I do like to ask is what people's celebrity crush is.
Oh.
So during the break, I'll say you got to know your neighbor's name and their celebrity crush. And most people's reaction is sort of like, what? I don't have one. I'm like, shut up. Everyone has one. You don't have to tell us so. But most people say it, and you get a lot of interesting nominations. Sometimes, you get the typical things, George Clooney.
That would be mine.
Yeah, I thought it would be actually, which is why I said it first. But you get a lot of known people now. And then every now and then people throw out some old school names, like, what was that guy from The Hunt for Red October? It was Sean Connery, right? The best James Bond or whatever. And then the other day, though, I got someone who said granted, we are in Washington, D.C., so we're inside the Beltway, which is 495. But anyways, one person said the Secretary of Labor. I'm like, what? Who is the Secretary of Labor? I have no idea, And people were like looking this person up on labor.gov or whatever the website is, and someone else is like, oh yes, he is a hot man.
Wow.
I was like, who is this guy? But then last night, people did not agree. I still haven't looked at the picture, but you get a lot of random stuff when you ask that question, which is fun.
That's awesome. I'm gonna have to steal that one. Yeah, I'm gonna go with that.
Yeah.
And then what do you say when they ask you?
I tend to be impressed by Emily Blunt.
Oh.
Yeah.
Excellent choice.
Cool.
Wait a minute. Was Emily Blunt in that movie Girl on a Train?
Yeah, she is in the movie that just came out. I'm probably not gonna watch that. I ended up watching.
Go ahead, and I accidentally went and saw that movie. That movie sucked. It was dumb. Don't bother. Don't waste your time. Yeah.
Okay.
Girl on a Train sucks.
Okay. Good to know. I feel like it's like one of those, that it's like 50 Shades of Grey. Like these books become popular, and you're like, what? Why are they? I don't understand them. I don't understand why they're the worldwide phenomena. And then they make movies for them. It's kind of like Gone Girl, and you kind of finish the movie, you're like, this is just I don't understand.
Gone Girl. I liked the book, but I thought the movie sucked because I hate Ben Affleck. Yeah.
Yeah. You hate Ben Affleck?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, don't see The Accountant. I saw that, and it was just kind of weird. By the end of the movie, I felt like he was like Batman.
To me, he might be a great director or whatever, writer even, but his acting, I just can't take it. He makes me roll my eyes just the second he walks onto camera. I don't know why he does. I just can't buy it.
Yeah. I did also see, by the way, I did see Deepwater Horizon.
Oh, yeah, that has good reviews.
I liked it. I thought it was a good movie. It was interesting. I mean, it's just about, the people who were on the rig and just the whole, like, what goes on the rig and what happened and how crazy it was.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds great. That's a good recommendation. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
Cool.
Sounds good. Thanks, Ben. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Make sure you email us, help@thinkinglsat.com, and we will talk to you soon.
Great. See ya.